I am very, very excited about this conversation on blockchain and the future of cities. With me is Sebastian Hinault, right to my left, who's with Renault and Nissan, and then Marloes Pomp, who's heading up blockchain for the Dutch government. It is very special to have them here. And let's get started in terms of who are you, what's your interest in blockchain, and just tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are this very second. Marloes, we'll start with you.
Yes, thank you. I'm Marloes Pomp. I'm the program leader of the blockchain projects run by the Dutch government, and I'm also responsible for the international strategy and the collaboration of the Dutch Blockchain Coalition. And that's a collaboration between government, universities, corporates, and startups. Well, blockchain took over my life last 2 years. It started when I trained the top officials of the government in new technologies. So not only on blockchain, but on upcoming technologies. And they didn't like the blockchain part in my training course. They didn't understand it, and they asked me to skip the blockchain part. And then I asked them, maybe we can do some blockchain pilots to understand better how we can use blockchain within our government, because when I try to explain it, it doesn't help. And they agreed, and within 2 weeks I had my first 15 blockchain projects. And at this moment I have more than 35 blockchain projects run by the government.
Wow.
Hi everybody, Sebastian from Renault. I'm working in an innovation lab, so basically our job is to find out new technologies and transfer this technology to the HQ. So it goes into car in the future. And I'm specifically in charge of something called business innovation, which is kind of finding the value of new technologies and explain that and build, I would not go that far, but some revenue models for new technologies. And of course, blockchain is a kind of a new, it's a game changer in a lot of things. And so I'm in charge of like trying to understand blockchain for the cars, what's the value proposition, what does it bring, and also build some pilot programs.
Okay, so we're going to talk about two different sectors, private sector and public sector. So let's start with the quote-unquote easy one first, private sector. So what does disruption look like? What is the value proposition? Just do kind of like the high-level 101 of what's happening in the space from both of your perspectives.
I think I'm representing the private sector. So as an OEM, basically, I would lie to you if I would say we have a clear understanding of what's the value proposition of blockchain. We're just scratching the surface at the moment. What we know is we know that OEMs are late in the game in everything related to digital. You all probably have a car with not that good infotainment system. We miss some trains, and we don't want to miss trains anymore. So everything related to IoT, artificial intelligence, and blockchain is really under the radar. In terms of disruption, again, we don't know. It's hard to say, but the risk is too high not to investigate blockchain, basically, because we are a very cyclic economy dealing with a lot of money, and if one competitor gets a competitive edge, if we, in the next product cycle where the revenues are lower, we miss something, then we can be really in trouble. So that's basically the answer is we don't know, but we know we can't miss it.
So you may not have use cases yet, but maybe it's magic wand time. If you could make it all up, what are some of the issues that blockchain could solve?
So at this stage, we're trying to figure out what's the value of blockchain. You have basically very simple ways of measuring what it can do. We have immutability of records, tokenization of experience, decentralized network, and with smart contracts, self-executing solutions. So if we take those 4 ones, you have very immediate use cases like supply chain that would rely on the immutable records. And the value of supply chain is not really in like suddenly blockchain is going to make supply chain work and everything's going to be true and magical. It's more into the certification side. It will help you certify your supply chain better. Supply chain is one of the most difficult part because moving cars, just for your information, a car costs, let's say, 15 grand, and an OEM makes $1,000 worth of revenue on it, bottom line. So when you're transporting things that are 15 times your margin, you don't want to mess up. So we see a big pocket of value here, but we're very cautious at it. If we go lower, say we have decentralization. Decentralization means, I had this discussion with a gentleman before, it can solve a lot of our internal IT issues, having a network of nodes and basically transforming the way we do internal stuff. A very simple example for understanding, I work in the pricing department and we are validating prices. We're giving guidelines to countries and help them validate the prices of cars. And it's with a very centralized system, and you have a set of validations from financial, marketing, product, and everything. This is we can immediately see the value of like putting that in a decentralized system of delegation of authority / validation. Continuing tokenization. Tokenization is making things basically liquid. Huge, probably the biggest value here in changing the way customer experience the car ownership. Again, very simple use case, shared economy. If you want to share your car, if we can like tokenize the car, making it liquid, it's easier to track who uses what, especially with smart contracts. You start the car, your counter goes. Going even further, tokenization of experience. Daimler just did something I just saw in the news recently. What if, while you use your car, the car basically rewards you in token. You can use these tokens to interact with the ecosystem. And ecosystem is a city, could be a city. If I go even lower and I speak about self-execution, we're going to have self-driving cars. What if they can self-execute contracts on a blockchain and become also automatic, like economical agents? They would pay for the toll by themselves. They would negotiate right of way with other cars. Tokens and blockchains and smart contracts allow that.
And from your perspective in the public sector, do you have any thoughts on what Sebastian's talking about in the private sector?
Well, I think the difference between private sector and government becomes smaller because in most of my projects, there's also a private company involved in the process. So it's not just projects in the private sector or at the government. At this moment in the Netherlands, what I try to do in my project is to figure out how we can make real projects. Because, of course, I know all the examples about self-driving cars and make the cars pay by themselves, etc. But I try to build the real cars, who can pay by themselves. So, and that's much more difficult. And then you don't need only blockchain for that, but it's about which private sector, which company, or which government is able to make the movement and to make the change. And I think we must focus much more at this moment on people who can lead the change than on the technology itself. Another example, we have elections next week in the cities. And we will. I have seen so many prototypes on for voting. That's a little bit boring, but it's really interesting to test it in several cities next week to figure out how can we do it. Do we need to change the law at certain points, or can we make our elections more secure or not? And do we need blockchain for that? So we must focus not on the big ideas and the nice examples, but we must test this a lot more. And then you need both government and private sector. So we must work together on this.
Is it fair to say that the Dutch are leading this transition?
No, I don't think so. We try to figure it out. And for example, we face many practical problems at this. So it's not, I don't think there's a country leading at this moment. We are willing to fail a lot at this moment. And that's what you need in projects. And one small example, the first project we launched in real life, it was a project at a city in the north part of the Netherlands, and we've built something on a voucher system on Ethereum. And the day we launched it, the crypto kitties became very popular, and the whole process slowed down. We really thought we were prepared, but we weren't prepared for the kitties. So you must try over again.
Yeah, well, it brings into question, the idea of individuality versus collaboration. I mean, what is that landscape like globally? Are you working in concert with other countries? Is
Yes.
it highly competitive? What is that experience like?
Well, from a government perspective, it doesn't feel like we really want to work together. And the second prototype we've built, it was about the transportation of toxic waste. And the most trucks, they need to cross borders. So it doesn't make sense if you build a prototype only for your own country. So we went to Belgium and we asked them, and Germany, we told them our trucks, they are crossing your country. We must work together on this. And then you need the custom to be involved, the authorities of other countries, the logistic networks in different countries. So in most of my products, the prototype is ready between 3 till 6 months. But after that, you must build a collaboration between different companies and governments. That's much more difficult, but that's the only way to make it happen.
So once again, the technology is ready, but the humans are the ones slowing it down.
Yes, exactly. Yes. But for most examples, you need collaboration between countries. At this moment, we work together, for example, on smart cities with Singapore. We have a lot of projects. We started most of our projects only with a focus on blockchain. But at this moment, most of my projects are a combination of blockchain and IoT or blockchain and AI. And for example, at this moment, we try to learn how we can work with autonomous objects in cities. For example, we've built a street light with a sensor in it. And when the sensor says the street light is broken, then the sensor triggers a smart contract. The smart contract sends out a micro job to certified repair people. And when the sensor indicates it works again, then the person who repaired the street light gets paid immediately. Well, that's what we're going to try to build together with the city in Singapore and
Awesome.
In the Netherlands, just to figure out how we
Right.
use
And let's
this.
talk about how we can implement that in as many cities in the U.S. as humanly possible.
Yes,
correct.
I know, that's much more difficult. Yes.
I'll help however I can. Sebastian, it looks like a lot of this is resonating with you. Is he head nodding? What are your thoughts?
The human part. I mean, on the OEMs are very prudent animals again because we're dealing with very expensive cars and very low margins. So every mistake is extremely costly. What we see, we have work to do, let's say, on better understanding the blockchain. The question I ask myself all the time is, why blockchain in this use case? I see tons of products that are building blockchains just to build blockchains. Just like, it works, for what? And if we don't want to redo the mistakes we made, like at the internet times with like pet.com and stuff like this, don't say it doesn't have a value, it's probably too early, but at the time it's just like, let's put everything on the internet.
Right.
We have to be cautious. That's one part on the use case. Then we need to understand the new economical equation. It's complicated. We're speaking about tokenomics. It's new asset class. You have currencies. You have platform tokens. Platform coins. You have tokens. You have unfungible assets. You have lots of things. Which one is the right one for the use case? And what is the cost/revenue equation in this? Because
Do we even have formulas for that yet, or it's still kind of murky?
It's kind of murky. You have people like Jack Taylor and Chris Berlinski doing a lot of work in it, scratching the surface, trying to put monetary equation in it. I'm also working on my side in trying to figure out what's the best tool to measure. Ultimately, it's really tied to the use case. I will take supply chain. If you can blockchainify, let's say, a supply chain, does it make sense? Because we have systems today. I can query any car on the Renault system, and it will tell me exactly where it is, what's the VIN number, what are all the options, what the client behind, and everything. What does the blockchain bring besides certification? If we use blockchain, do we reduce cost? If we use a public blockchain, aren't we tied to a specific token, which valuation can be being too volatile for? It's lots of questions we're trying to answer before we go. And on the internal side, then we have some antibodies in the system. I call that the fight between value creation and value protection. So I'm in the innovation lab of Renault, so I'm mostly into value creation. And this crazy guy coming with crazy ideas. And when we speak to, again, supply chain people, they just want to protect what works. Because if it fails, then it's really costly. And trying to evangelize people to bring a complete, let's say, analysis of what's the value is a tough process. So what we do, we build POCs, proof of concept, small experiments. We start small, we see how it goes, and then we see, depending on how we will scale, what's going to be the value. And I'm also trying to evangelize people at the HQ, which is extremely complicated. Just one person, it's a funny one. It's kind of sad. Told me, I want to organize a kind of roadshow to evangelize our people. And one person told me by email, sorry, we don't have time, and blockchain is not a transformative lever.
Wow.
I was just like, wow. So I have to climb.
But you didn't say I quit. You said that sounds like a challenge.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. It's we have to be resilient in trying to convince the company. I mean, the top management is convinced, but it's all about like having all the layers aligned to make things happen, and it's a tough job.
We also work on the. We think blockchain might help to share safety information between different cars. We will test, at this moment we prepare a test is the first step. It's a decentralized model of sharing safety information, but at the end we try to build something for the the car-to-car communication. And blockchain might help, we're not sure, but we try to figure it out.
So Sebastian, you said earlier the risk of doing nothing is too high. What does that mean? And I mean, there's a intellectual way to think about it, but I think when you were saying it, I sensed a lot of heart. So what's your heart telling you about that?
So clients are changing faster than products today. I mean, on the car industry. The main reason of buying a car like 5 years ago was price, was design, still design, price, but now there's a new top three, which is what infotainment do I have? Does it have CarPlay? I mean, an OEM that's late, and we're all late, except Tesla maybe, have a bad infotainment, really suffers a lot on the market. I believe that blockchain will be a kind of a next have to, like, millennials buying a car in the next 5 years will probably ask, okay, cool, your car is fine. What's the ecosystem of services, and do you have a token? It's probably going to be something like this.
Yeah.
Maybe not, but we don't want to miss that, and so we're trying to figure out. Because the clients of today and the clients of tomorrow are completely different.
Yeah. If they're even buying cars, right?
Yeah. Someone will
Sorry,
have to
not
buy
trying
it.
to like completely ruin your day, but
Owning is the people will have to buy it, but owning is the question. Yeah.
oh, interesting. Yeah, for sure. Marlos, for you, what's the risk of not moving fast enough or not doing anything?
Well, it depends on the industry and the role you have. At this moment, it's really immature technology. So I don't think for example, in the Netherlands, I don't think every city needs to build prototypes at this moment, because it's better to have clusters of cities working together on prototypes, because it's really difficult to build anything at this moment. It also depends on, for example, we work on some topics or projects. It's more to get a better view of, how does it work within 5 years. But we also need some practical pilot projects where we can learn the state of technology today. So you must find a combination of those kinds of projects. And it depends on your own organization, and also, do you have any blockchain developers at your company or available? It depends on which topic or which project you must choose. So I don't think everybody must build any blockchain projects at this moment. You can also wait. It depends on the industry
What's
and your
there? Yeah.
yes.
Okay, so let's dream for 2 minutes, and then we'll open it up for questions. If you could design your most amazing blockchain project, what would that be? You could just snap your fingers and your reality is realized. What is it?
Oh,
I didn't prep them with this question, so I'm kind of throwing a zinger in there.
Well, I like I prefer to do more projects where we use a combination of technologies and not only blockchain, because blockchain only blockchain, it's actually quite boring.
Yeah.
So,
Put away your tomatoes, people. No, don't. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, so I like the projects where we can make a real change. And at this moment, I prefer projects in the supply chain. For example, we do some coffee projects in Ethiopia where we can give the farmer a better price, a fair price. Or with the United Nations and the World Bank, we work on palm oil. So at this moment, those kinds of projects are projects where we can really change the life of people. So I prefer those projects.
Yeah. Great, fantastic. Sebastian, what about you? You've had a second to think about it. So.
I mean, actually, I had like weeks because I'm building something that building the bricks of this vision. The idea is when you buy a car, it's exactly what I said before. When you have a car, the car has a wallet, and as a customer, you have a wallet too. And everything you do with the car generates token creation or spending. It's basically a brand new economy. Applies very well in everything related to electric cars, the way you charge. Depending on how you charge, if you use renewable energy, if you have a contract, if you help the electric network with your car, you can get tokens. You can spend them in the city. Could be for paying tolls or parking, or if tomorrow Nissan operates a robo-taxi, like autonomous driving taxi, you can probably use the tokens you earn as a owner of a car customer to use shared mobility. So this whole ecosystem of like having this token, it's kind of the dream I have, because I think it brings a lot of value and could be a game changer for car ownership.
Well,
my dream for the cars is that it starts paying my parking fees by itself. So it's a really small step.
Make it happen,
yes.
So.
But once you have this blockchain, it's fairly easy, because blockchains by essence are open, decentralized. We just give you an access to the chain, and we make sure it works.
Yes, my car knows where it is, and if it needs to pay a parking fee, so I can't forget it anymore. So that will be a nice first step.
The collaboration happened here, y'all, right here. Okay, one or two questions before we move on. Yes, sir.
This is the real question. In light of the capabilities provided by the technology, which business models now make sense that previously were impossible?
It's exactly the question. When I say business model, it's not about revenue. It's revenue minus cost. At the moment we are scratching the surface, as I said, about what is the cost of like operating our own blockchain or relying on a third-party blockchain, relying on token, and the revenues. It's the whole question of tokenomics. I don't have the answer, but that's definitely the question.
So you talked about supply chain more on the consumer-facing side. We're looking at an industry in the defense world, obviously 40,000 suppliers, multi-tiered. So from a business-to-business perspective, are you seeing some opportunities with blockchain to manage that kind of a multi-tiered supply chain?
Oh, for me. So supply chain, you can divide it in before you build the car, let's say, and then once the car is built, how it's distributed. So I guess you're speaking about all the before building the car. We are looking at that. Supply chain is one of the biggest pocket of value, but it's also the most risky move, because if something doesn't work in your supply chain, because you're trying to change the system. It could be anything, like a small button on your car that's missing because there's something happened. Then you can't produce the car, and then you lose. I mean, it's tremendous amounts of money you lose. So we are investigating that, but in a very, very cautious way. But yes, there's as much value, probably more, on identifying the parts and making sure that basically the car that has a digital existence on the blockchain, we can trace all the parts. Ultimately, this is not going to be done, my assumption, into public blockchains, probably something private. We don't want to share this information, and we don't think that the customer knowing where this little knob comes from doesn't have value for him, and it's our own business buy the finished product. We're looking at that.
Marlos, any thoughts on that? No. Okay, perfect. All right, one more. Anyone? All right, it's a wrap. Join me. Thank you so much.
Thank you.